Upon its debut, Robert Eggers' much-anticipated horror movie Nosferatu was met with critical acclaim and a box office return much higher than initial projections, but it still continued a Rotten Tomatoes trend for Robert Eggers movies. Starring Bill Skarsgård as the nefarious Count Orlok, Nosferatu is a remake of the 1922 silent German expressionist movie from which the character originates. Early reviews for Nosferatu were stellar, and as more critics and moviegoers have registered their opinions, the high Rotten Tomatoes scores have held steady. Prior to Nosferatu, each of Robert Eggers' movies achieved a Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter score of 90% or higher, indicating that at least 90% of critics rated the movie as fresh. To simplify, a tomato meter score is the percentage of critics who gave the movie a positive review. While Nosferatu may come up short of the 90% mark, it settled in around 86% after the first 5 days in the theaters. The fourth movie in the up-and-coming auteur's filmography, Nosferatu actually broke a record for Robert Eggers with regard to its audience reception. Robert Eggers' audience scores are much lower than his critic scores. Each of Eggers' 4 feature films has excellent critic scores, but middling audience scores. As incredible as Robert Eggers' tomato meter scores have been, his popcorn meter scores, a measure of what percentage of audience reviewers register positive reviews, have been middling at best. Despite all 4 of his movies registering at 86% or higher with critics, Nosferatu has so far achieved the highest audience score, at just 75%. The disparity is stark in 2 examples, as the difference between the critic score and audience score for 2 of his movies, The Witch and The Northman, is greater than 25%. While it's not uncommon for there to be some disparity between critic and audience scores, it usually skews in the opposite direction. Oftentimes, critics will treat a popcorn movie or blockbuster with a more discerning and disparaging eye, while moviegoers in search of entertainment at the movies will embrace a film. For example, Sony's Marvel movie Venom was shredded by critics, and holds a tomato meter score of 30% while its popcorn meter score is 80%. It makes Robert Eggers' movies a bit of an enigma, but Nosferatu actually provides plenty of evidence as to why there's a disparity. Robert Eggers' methodical filmmaking requires patience. His attention to detail inherently makes his movies slow burns. Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe staring each other down in The Lighthouse. Digging into the Rotten Tomatoes comments on Eggers movies, one of the common audience complaints is that Eggers movies are slow, and occasionally the word boring is used. In reality, Eggers movies are somewhat slow to develop, but that's merely a byproduct of his filmmaking style. Eggers is famous for his painstaking attention to detail, both in creating the historical setting in which his stories take place and in establishing his characters. Nosferatu perfectly demonstrates that attention to detail, particularly with regard to character development. To be clear, the detail that Eggers puts into creating a dilapidated Transylvanian castle or an 1830s German port city is mind-blowing, but the slow burn he puts into his characters is next level. It takes more than half the movie to fully understand that Lily Rose Depp's Ellen Hutter is driven by the guilt of her past summoning of Count Orlok, but it's a key aspect of fully grasping her self-sacrifice at the end of the movie. That Eggers' folk horror stories are hard for a broad audience to identify with. Each movie is heavy with foreign language and specific regional lore. The Northman Valkyrie. Each of Eggers' movies, even some elements of the more action-adventure-leaning The Northman, falls into the folk horror subgenre, which is defined by the use of folk stories and ancient lore to inspire dread. The reason why lies in how heavily Eggers uses regional elements like language and period-specific aesthetics, costumes, and behavior. Because of that, modern audiences can struggle to fully connect or even understand all the details required to fully digest each movie. The films can be so far removed from modern sensibilities that they become difficult to connect with from an entertainment perspective.